Hello, everybody. My name is Max Blakelock, and I am your host for Teacher Talks, a show where we just talk with teachers. Now, for today's episode, I had the privilege to chat with the one and only Principal Lehmann, and we talk about many things, including his background. We talk about his life outside of school, but mainly we talk about how he built SLA and everything leading up to that, and of course we have a little fun as well. So without further ado, here is Teacher Talks with Mr. Lehman. I hope you enjoy.
We're with the FBI. Does anybody here know Chris Lehmann? This press release came out, and I was like, well, what if we moved to Philly? And I tried to start a school there.
That would definitely
Like
be
a butterfly, sting like a bee. Remember my name? It's Muhammad Ali. Sir, did you throw your son through a wall?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Teacher Talks, a show where we just talk with teachers. Today, we have a very, very, very special guest, Mr. Coach, Principal, whatever you call him here is Lehmann. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. How are we feeling today? Feeling good?
Yeah, absolutely. Symptom free. So doing well.
Yes, for those of you who don't know, I do have COVID. That's why this is all over Zoom. It was originally supposed to be in person up in the studio on the 6th floor, but gotta go with the flow and do what you can with what you got. So, first of all, why don't you, for people who don't know, tell us, who you are and what you do at SLA.
Sure. So I'm Chris Lehmann. I am the founding principal of Science Leadership Academy and the CEO of SLA Schools. Also our boys' ultimate Frisbee coach and the dad of Jacob, a senior, and Theo, a ninth grader.
Perfect. So obviously you are, as you said, the founding principal of SLA. But we're going to go back to before SLA even originated. I know you went to Pennsbury High School. Did you grow up around there? How was your childhood,
I
I
did.
guess?
I mean, oh, sure. So I grew up in South Jersey and Bucks County. So in Mount Laurel until I was 13, and then moved in eighth grade or the start of eighth grade to Pennsbury. Went to college, went to high school in Bucks County, and then college in Philadelphia.
Simple as that. What did you go to college for? You went to Penn, right?
Yeah, I was an English major.
Okay. So did you know you wanted to start a school going into college? Was that a
Goodness, no.
thought in your mind?
No, teaching was, but I mean, I don't think, as a 20-year-old, I could have imagined starting a school. I don't think that was, that wasn't sort of on my radar. No, it's funny because for years, people were like, oh, you want to be an English major? What are you going to do? Teach English, be an English teacher? And I was like, no, of course not. And it was sort of like, I joke around that I was sort of like denying destiny. And then right out of college, or my senior year in college, I got two job offers. One was to do Teach for America in I think the second year Teach for America even existed. No one had really ever heard of it. And second or third year. And then the other was to go down to DC and work for a nonprofit. And at the time, the teaching job was more money than the nonprofit job. And I was like, well, I'm going to teach, later on down the line. And I also had the thought that at 22 years old, TFA was going to put me in Brooklyn teaching senior English at a high school in Brooklyn. I was 22 years old. I had a baby face. And I was like, I can't imagine that I have anything to teach these kids. I'm 4 years older than them. What do I know? And I kind of felt like also, if I started teaching at 22, I wasn't going to teach long term. I thought I would burn out because I kind of, as you know, I kind of throw my whole self into the stuff that I do. And I didn't think I knew how to say no or balance my life at all. And so I was like, you know what, let me take this other job. It's the only time in my life I'm going to be willing to make $15,000 a year, which is what it was paying me. It was a profoundly ramen noodle salary. And and let me grow up for a couple of years before I go into teaching. And so that's what I did. Went down to DC. Actually only stayed at that job for like 4 months. I hated it. I got a job working in the government for the Department of Justice, doing research and programming and stuff like that, and sort of grew up for 2 years. And then said like, okay, I've spent these 2 years. These were fun. Now let me go do this thing that I think I want to do for the rest of my life, which was teaching.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't know that. You worked like for the government. It's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah, I had like clearance and everything. There's all these fun stories of like, because I worked, I had access to like all the databases for the Federal Bureau of Prisons, which includes like witness protection and all that stuff. And so they had to do a full clearance check on me. And there are these funny stories of them going back to like the office I worked in college and like walking in, like flashing their badges and be like, we're with the FBI. Does anybody here know Chris Lehmann? And like all of my old friends were like who were younger than me were like, oh God, what did he do? And it was like a background check. But yeah, it's all these funny stories of like the FBI knocking on doors and making sure that I wasn't, whatever. But they cleared me, so rock on.
That's funny.
But yeah, so I got to do that. But yeah, it was fun. It was a really nice 2 years to get to go do that after college and kind of grow up a little bit and get involved in the world of work, and then go do this thing that, felt like for me it was going to be the rest of my life kind of thing.
For sure. So I know obviously Ultimate is a big part of your life, and I of course want to touch on that, being on the Ultimate team myself. So you started playing Ultimate in high school, or does that sound right?
I lost you there for a second.
Oh,
Sorry,
you
what'd you
lost
say,
me?
Max?
Okay.
Yeah, you got a little chop.
When did you start playing Ultimate?
Oh, so I played at this summer camp I went to, right? I went to this summer camp called CTY. And the counselors were college players, right? Some of them were. And so there was this huge culture of like, they were teaching kids Ultimate, and it was quasi Ultimate, right? Like it wasn't Ultimate, it now. But or even Ultimate as it existed then, like at the college level. But a bunch of us all loved it and learned how to play. And what the counselors all said to us is the next time you'll play seriously is when you go to college. So I went to college knowing I really wanted to play Ultimate. And I really loved it. And I fell in love with it just at that summer camp, and then learned how to play for real in college. And, that was a long time ago, 31 years ago that I started playing for real, and probably my goodness, 37 years ago that I started playing, like that I got introduced to the game.
Yeah. So you're a veteran pro at Ultimate.
Yeah, I've been around.
So I know you mentioned, like you said, you're in DC. Did you find a way to play in DC? Or was that kind of in the back of your mind?
I did. So it's actually, I did actually. So it's interesting. So like I was working this job for this nonprofit, and I was working like, like 80 hours a week, and I didn't have time to play a whole lot. And I was going out and I was playing pickup. And you're frozen, Max. You still there? Are you hearing me?
Yep, I hear you. You're good for me. Good.
Okay, cool.
These are what we have to go through
cool.
because of COVID.
So I know, right? So it was interesting because at a pickup game, I ran into this guy I knew who was like, hey, I thought we'd see more of you. We knew you were moving down here. Like, what's going on? And I'm like, look, all I do is work. And he was like, well, do you like what you do? And I was like, no, I'm frustrated by it. And, he worked at the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and he was like, well, you're a programmer. Like, you know how to program? I'm like, yeah, I do. Like, yeah, I got some skill. And he was like, well, we're hiring. Do you want to interview for the, do you want to talk to us and stuff like that? And I, came in and talked to their boss, and like had the skill set they needed and stuff like that. And that job was like a 45 hour a week job. It was like a normal 9 to 5, and it gave me the time to play. And so I, was able, like I left the job I had and, started working. And when I did that, I was able to play club after college, which was great. And that started me on my club career. I played for 2 years in DC, and then I played for like 9 years club in New York. Now obviously, I'm only a league player. My club days are gone, although, maybe I'll join the great grandmasters division. I don't know now that I'm over 50, but it is, you know, it was, yeah, it's been this big part of my life for,
Yeah,
years, years.
for sure. So you went from DC to New York to Philly. Which one was your favorite to live in?
I mean,
No pressure at all.
gotta say Philly, right? I mean, I've lived in Philadelphia between college and then after college, SLA. I mean, I've lived inside Philly city limits for 20 years. I lived in the Philly suburbs for my whole growing up. So I've been in the Philly area for, 38 of my 51 years, right?
Yeah.
So so that's home. I mean, Philly is home to me. DC was cool. DC is a weird town. It's very much like a company town. People are very sort of like, it was a weird, like, I still have very, very dear friends from that time. I mean, you've met one of them, AJ, who comes out and helps us out sometimes whenever we play
Uh-huh.
down there. Is one of my dearest friends from that time in my life. Um, and New York is cool. Like, New York's a fun place to live, but Philly's home. I mean, Philly is Philly. And, there's, I will always be, I will always consider myself a Philly guy.
For sure. So I don't want to talk about SLA too much, but I feel like we have to talk about how you started SLA and kind of what went into that, why, and just all the details about that.
Sure. So when I worked in New York City, I worked at a school that was a young school, and I got there when the first class were seniors. So I got there in year 4 and really helped to build that school into what it became. And, it's an amazing thing, right? Like, when you work in service of somebody else's dream, you are kind of given license to dream yourself, right? Like, and I think that's one of the neat things that happened, right? Is that, like, I worked for 2 school founders who talked about, who basically asked us to help them sort of fulfill their dream.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, I loved that school. I was there 9 years. I would say that school was maybe 80% of what I thought a school should be. And that last 20% was kind of the loose tooth I could never stop wiggling, right? Like, and you find yourself asking this question, well, what would I do if it was, if I had the chance? And then there was this press release in like winter 2000 and like December 2004, and it said Philadelphia to start 27 new small schools. And my wife was at a point in her career where she was kind of like, we were at a place where, like, we'd lived in New York City for a long time. New York is a cool place to raise one kid, a little tough to raise more than that. Like, she was ready to kind of downshift her career. She was working as, like 80-hour weeks as a high-powered executive at a television station, and she didn't want to be doing that anymore. And we were like, all right, well, what would life look like otherwise? And then this press release came out, and I was like, well, what if we moved to Philly and I tried to start a school, And she was like, yeah, let's do that. Like, let's do it. And she was ready. She was like, let's go. And so I wrote a sort of like a 1-pager on what I thought a school could be. I called it the Philadelphia Academy of Teaching and Learning, which would have had the really ridiculous acronym of PADDLE, which I thought was funny. And I started taking meetings with anyone who would take a meeting with me. Let me talk to you about the school I want to start. Let me talk to you about this thing I want to do. And my whole thing was like, never end a meeting without knowing what your next meeting was. So like, meetings would end and I would say to people like, who do you think I should meet with next? Or can you put me in touch with them? Like, what have you? And I had no training at that. I don't think of myself as particularly good at that. And yet, you know, it worked.
Yeah.
And, I like to think the idea was a really good idea. And at one of those meetings, actually in what became the original SLA building, I was meeting with somebody from the district, and she said to me, she's like, you talk like the people at the Franklin Institute. We're supposedly talking to them about starting a school. You should go meet with them. She picks up the phone. She calls over to the Franklin Institute and picks up her phone. And she says, like, I've got this kid here. I was 33 years old. This one was, like much older, much, veteran educator. And she calls over, she goes, I've got this kid here. He talks like you. You got 5 minutes for him? And she hangs up the phone. She's like, you're going to go take a meeting. She's literally got 5 minutes for you. Go now. So I
Yeah.
walk over to
Oh,
Franklin,
so it was literally right after you went right there.
Oh, yeah. No, I like walk right over there. And I go up to the executive offices of the Franklin Institute, which is an incredibly intimidating space. And I knock on this woman, Carol Parson's door. This very, very elegant older woman comes to the door, and I had this packet that I was shopping around that had my resume and some clippings from stuff we'd done in New York and the one pager I'd written on the school. And I kind of hand her she comes to the door, she looks at me and she goes, you have 5 minutes.
I feel like I can picture this out of a movie.
Oh yeah, no, it's this is a movie scene. It really, really was. And so I hand her this packet and she looks at me and she says, what is an English teacher doing wanting to start a science high school? And I said, well, the Franklin Institute doesn't just want to start a science high school. She goes, excuse me? And she said, so I looked at her, I was like, look, if you start a science high school, you'll get great science and math teachers, but everybody else in the building will feel like second-class citizens because the school won't be about their subject. What you want to start is an inquiry-driven high school, a high school where everything that happens shares the same ethos as this museum, where you learn by doing, hands-on, ask big questions. That's the school you want to start. That's how you'll get great English and history teachers as well, because they'll be bought into the content, they'll be bought into the pedagogy of the school. And of course, it's going to have a great science program. It's affiliated with the Franklin Institute. You guys don't want to start a science high school. You want to start an inquiry-driven high school. That's the high school you want to start. And, and I'm saying this as fast as possible because that 5-minute timer is going off in my head, right? And she looks at me, she says, keep talking. And 5 minutes turned into 2.5 hours. And, one school has turned into 3. And, but that was literally this meeting, inside that meeting, she was like, look, we don't know where we are with the district right now. We don't know if they want to go through with this. We're getting fed up. We're frustrated, And I looked at her and I said, well, if you had your principal in mind, would that restart your interest? And she goes, it would. And I said, great. Well, you got your principal in mind, and she became, sort of that original partner I had working with the Franklin. And it was great. It was a wonderful partnership for, all the years we were partnered with them.
That's awesome. I did not know that. That was
it's a fun story.
Literally, I could picture you going up to, I can just see it in a movie. So you've had a lot of guests come to SLA, whether it was, I don't know, a lot of different special guests come speak to SLA. What would you say? I feel like this is an obvious answer, but for those who don't know, what would you say? Who would you say is the coolest person that spoke to students at SLA?
I mean, that's got to be Obama, right? I mean, President Obama. Bill Gates was cool. Michael Dell was cool. There were some cool people over the years, but President Obama.
It's hard to
that
when you tell somebody that Bill Gates was speaking, you're not going to think that there was someone else that was even cooler. So that's pretty awesome. Yeah. How come we don't do that anymore? Why can't you get Obama to speak to us now, Lehmann?
I'm a failure. I think post-pandemic's been a little rough, but hopefully we'll get back to that. Those have been some really cool moments.
For sure. So I know you are a big Philly sports fan, and I can't just avoid that, being a big Philly sports fan myself. We got a big Game 5 tonight, but how do you feel about let's just talk about the Sixers a little. I know we could talk about it forever, but I want to talk about it for at least a little.
Sure.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good after those last 2 games.
They say that it's not a playoff series until somebody loses at home, right? So we'll see. But it's, I think this is, I think they're rallying around Joel. I think that this on some level, it's hard not to love this team. They're, I mean, Joel is just a warrior out there. Maxi is the player we've always needed. I know that he's a divisive player, but I love Tobias Harris. I think the guy's a lunch pail guy. I think he does whatever's asked of him. I think he changes his role depending on what the team needs. I think he gives you everything. I don't think he's the greatest athlete in the world. I mean, obviously he's an NBA athlete. They're all great athletes, but compared to other NBA athletes, I think he's, like he makes it happen because he's smart, he's tough, and he's a little things kind of guy, but he's not this freakish athlete. Like you watch him covering Butler, you watch him covering, Siakam in the last series, and you realize this guy is just making it happen because he knows the game. He's such a scholar of the game. And he's just giving you everything. And I love guys like that, right? I mean, like those are my kind of guys. And,
Yep, for sure. You didn't mention James Harden, his 31-point performance.
I mean, this. I don't love Harden's game. It's iso ball. It's not the way I like to play. It wasn't the way I liked to coach. That being said, he's our guy. So yeah, I mean, and he's playing hard. I mean, he's playing defense, which is great. That was my big fear with him. He's picking his spots on when to iso better. I think when Joel is out there, he feels, good about stuff. And I think, also Doc finally realized that DeAndre Jordan is not the answer at backup center. And I think that Harden actually works well with a rim runner like Paul Reed, right? Like Paul Reed is a rim runner. And historically, Harden has played really well with rim runners. And, I understand that Jordan used to be a rim runner, but he's not anymore. And he can't play defense. And, it's tough. And I get it. He's a great character guy. He's a great locker room guy. But I'm glad that we made the adjustment. And I'm glad to see Harden stepping up and being the player we need him to be, both in being a scorer, but also in understanding that his role on this team is not the same as it was when he was in Houston. He's not that guy anymore.
For sure. Now, that being said, Tyrese Maxey, if you happen to be watching this, which I know is a long shot, come speak at our graduation. We have talked about, we haven't had a lot of speakers. We'd love to have you. Big fans. Anyway, just throwing that out there just for fun. But I want to do a little bit of I had something planned for being in person. Obviously, it's gonna have to be adjusted a little. But my thoughts of this were I was gonna do rapid fire questions.
All right.
But it does not have to be rapid fire. But I'm gonna ask you some more supposed to be kind of more fun questions.
Go for it.
This first one, we kind of already got to this, but it's just if you could live in any other city, where would it be?
London.
Oh, okay. This one's a little tough. You can think about this one. If you could have dinner with any 4 people, past, present, anyone, who would they be?
Any 4?
Any 4. If you can't think of 4, that's fine.
No, I would want Pete Seeger, the folk singer, Obama, President Obama, only 4. Pete Seeger, President Obama.
You think you have more people than 4?
I'm just like, oh my God. I'm trying to doing the dinner guests, who would be good to talk to these people, right?
Right.
Oh my goodness. How am I drawing such a blank? Pete Seeger, President Obama, those 2 came really quickly. Those were easy. After that, it gets hard. Who would you want to see them talk to, right? I would love to. Hang on. Morning SLA, Blackton Jr. will be meeting in Mr. Keith's room at 10:45.
10:45. All
There you go. I would love to get the chance to have them talk with, there's an educator, um, Nell Noddings, who forms the basis of a lot of the idea of the ethic of care that we talk about at SLA. I think she'd be an amazing person to have in the room to talk about that stuff. And I'd love to see her talk with them, and I'd love to talk to her. And then let's throw Bruce Springsteen in the mix, mostly because Obama and he are friends, and they're doing that whole podcast together right now, which if you haven't listened to is amazing. And I think that would be fun.
Nice. Those were good four answers. If you could pick an occupation besides what you do now, what would it be? And it can't be like teacher because you're a principal, like something outside of the school.
Sure. I'd be a college basketball coach.
Oh, women's, because I know you had coached women's in the past.
That would be fun. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. What's your dream school to coach? Like if you were like, hey, you could coach any school right now, would you take Coach K's job?
No. I mean, coach at any school, where would it be? I mean, I love Philly, so I'm gonna go ahead and say I'd go to my alma mater. I'm gonna go coach the Penn team. Ivy League basketball's fun.
Yeah. If you could meet any famous athlete right now, who would it be?
Any famous athlete right now, like alive or dead, or
Sure, alive or dead. Let's do that.
Any famous athlete? Jim Brown. No, Muhammad Ali. That's who I would need. Muhammad Ali.
That would definitely be
like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Remember my name. It's Muhammad Ali.
There you go.
But I mean, like, great. I mean, it's sort of the best. I mean, the reason I went with Brown at first and why Ali also is just the intersection of understanding sports and society and the incredible power that athletes can have to speak for social change. You know, Ali was one of my dad's heroes for that. And I'd love the chance to talk to him about his experiences. And ask me about what it was like to stand in, toe to toe with Frazier, right? I mean,
yeah. No doubt you can ask him a lot of questions.
Yeah.
What's your favorite food?
Veal parm.
Good answer.
From Ralph's.
Oh, a specific one. Okay.
Veal parmesan is big as your head.
What is the coolest place you have visited, and where would you like to visit that you haven't visited before?
I got to spend a week in Prague. That was pretty incredible. It's an amazing. That's the other place I was trying to think if I'd rather live in London or Prague. Prague was pretty amazing. Kauai also is just like gorgeous, right? Like the island of Kauai in Hawaii is magnificent. There are a lot of places I'd like to go. I mean, I'd love to go to. I've never been to Italy. I'd love to go to Italy. There's yeah, I mean, a million places I'd love to go, but Italy would be cool. Yeah, we'll go with that for now.
For sure. And then, do you have a favorite book or author?
Oh God. Yeah, I have a few zillion, right? Like, for years, I like my rainy day book when I just wanted to like comfort food was like I would reread The World According to Garp by John Irving, but the author has kind of been like really become kind of a jerk in his old age, and so it's not as much fun to read anymore, which makes me really sad. Favorite book. Yeah, there's a book by a British author named Jeanette Winterson called Written on the Body, and it's about a genderless narrator is having an affair with a married woman, right? You don't know if they're married, and it's this gorgeous, beautiful lyric novel, and it's just gorgeous. It's just beautiful. I wrote my senior, it was part of my, actually I wrote my senior thesis on her first novel, but she was my favorite author for years and years and years. And that's my favorite of her books. So we'll go with that.
Perfect. And
I also
then,
love any good like detective novel, I'm in, right? Like I've read like all of the Spencer novels. I've read like tons of British detective series. Like that's like comfort food for me. That's the mac and cheese of literature for me.
oh, I like that analogy.
Thank you.
um, do you have a favorite musical artist?
Van Morrison. I'm coming off as like a total Anglophile, right? Like I want to live in London. I like it, the Irish, like, but yeah, no, Van Morrison. But I mean, my musical tastes are like pretty wide ranging. But Astral Weeks is the perfect album, and Summertime in England is the perfect song.
And then we have two more questions before we end this episode off. But this one is more so, what would you say would be the funniest or one of the funniest or best moments at SLA throughout your whole SLA career, which is all of SLA?
Oh God, what's the funniest moment?
It could be with teachers, students.
Oh my God. I mean, think about how much we laugh around SLA, right? Like
Yeah.
that's one of the funniest moments, and this is like not okay, but it was funny, is years ago in the old building. If you remember, like the stairwell drywall was very thin, and this kid had gotten in trouble, and we called his dad. His dad was a cop, and it was not the first time the kid got in trouble. And the kid comes upstairs and he's covered in dust, and the father is kind of apologetic, and he says, "Excuse me, I'm so sorry. There might be a hole in the stairwell wall." And I'm like, "Sir, did you throw your son through a wall?" And it turned out like he got angry and kind of like went right through the wall.
Oh my gosh.
That was kind of ridiculous. That was not a good moment, but funny. Oh my, but I mean, there've been so many wonderful moments, just so many great moments where like just I mean, most of like there was this one silly moment that like we all enjoyed, which was it was a Saturday when we were doing interviews of new students, and it was before all the kids came, and I think I can't remember if it was Jacob or Theo was little, and it had to be probably Theo, I guess, and he was there, maybe Jacob was, and they were reading, and because they were there, like we brought like children's books because like I was babysitting them as we were, or the kids were babysitting them as we were doing the interviews. And one of the books that the kids were reading at the time was that the little kids were reading was Have You Seen My Hat? Which is this silly fun book. And the kids asked me to read it to them. And so I read it in full voice, and it's actually on YouTube somewhere. And just it was this silly, funny moment of like all of these like 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, like, and their principal reading to them this like 5-year-old's book. And it was just this lovely, fun, kind of joyful moment. It always stands out for me as like this just very fun, very SLA kind of moment. But there's hundreds of them, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
kids lip syncing around the table, I mean, all of those moments, right? Or just all of the laughter in my office, right? It will be
Yeah,
always what I think of.
no doubt. And then the final question of the day, maybe I should have given you time to think about this, but if you had to do a senior capstone, what would it be? And would it be different at your age now than it would be as a senior in high school?
I mean, on some level, I feel like the school is my capstone, right?
Yeah, that's
So on some level, right? I mean, like, the school is my capstone. That's it today. What would I have done as an 18-year-old? That's a great question. Like, what would I have done? I would have done some social activism, right? So like when I was a senior in high school, that was during, I graduated in 1989. So the fall of my senior year was the Michael Dukakis versus George Bush campaign. And I was the highest ranking high school kid volunteer for the Dukakis campaign in Bucks County. Like I I just worked like a dog on that campaign, like every day after school, missed some school. Like if there was something going on, I was making sure I was helping. And so that experience and what it was like to work on a campaign and to try to make a difference, that probably would have been, I would have created something around my capstone, probably. Either that or or you will appreciate this of all people. I did TV sports in high school. And I was like by senior year, I was a producer. I was more of a producer than I was, and a director than I was on camera. But like, I can still do this is Chris Lehmann coming to you live from Falcon Field for the Suburban One National matchup between the Pennsbury Falcons and the Neshaminy Indians, right? Like before they changed their name, which is good. But so the other thing I would have done is like, I did the video yearbook. We had this awesome video yearbook. I might have done some film stuff also. So it would have been one of those two things.
Nice. Well, those are some very good options. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to join me today. We had a great conversation, a great little episode. Do you have any final thoughts or anything final to say?
No, I think this is fun. I love the idea of like really humanizing the relationship between students and teachers. I think that's a great capstone. So congrats, Max. This is awesome.
Thank you. Well, we'll see you guys next time, and thank you for watching.